Yesterday, a child came out to wander, caught a dragonfly inside a jar. Fearful when the sky was full of thunder, and tearful at the falling of a star. And the seasons, they go round and round, painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, and go round and round and round in a circle game. And then the child moved 10 times round the seasons, skated over 10 clear frozen streams. Words like "when you're older" must appease him, and promises of someday make his dreams. And the seasons, they go round and round, painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, go round and around and around in a circle game. "16 springs and 16 summers gone now. Cartwheels turn to car wheels in a town. And they tell him, take your time, it won't be long now, till you drag your feet too slow to circle down. And the seasons, they go round and round, painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, go round and around and around in a circle game. Many years go by and now the boy's 20, and his dreams have lost some grandeur coming true. There'll be new dreams, maybe better dreams and plenty, before the last revolving year is through. And the seasons, they go round and round, painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. Can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, and go around and around and around in a circle game. And go round and round and round in a circle game.
Welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, you are welcome here. All of you is welcome here. It is good to be together this morning. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral lands First Universalist now stands. If you are here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. We have a visitor's form that can be found in the chat. Please click on it and fill out the form so that we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. As we gather this morning, we want to invite you to pop into the chat and offer a greeting. You can find this at the top or the bottom of the screen with an icon of a text bubble and the word chat on it. So please pop on over and offer a greeting. It could be a wave of a hello. It could be an I'm here, or whatever you prefer. Welcome, welcome to worship at First Universalist. And now, let us join hearts and voices in singing together this morning, recognizing that even as we are singing muted in our own home, we are creating a song across our city of Rochester, the country, and indeed the world. Let us sing together hymn number 20, Be Thou My Vision.
Call from Beyond by Susan McGinn. From beyond the playful summer clouds, beyond the earth's thin blue line, from beyond the bright moon and meteor showers, we hear the call to look and listen carefully, to turn away from a world that buys and sells happiness, to fully experience the luring whisper of your heart's truth. Not today? Why not now? We are here and together at home in this evolving place, home in this ever-changing breath and body, home in this dewy morning, even as it reaches towards a hot high noon. We hear the call from far beyond and deep within, and we do not hear it alone. Come, let's worship together. As Peter House lights the chalice at First Universalist Church, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by the doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. Generosity is our spiritual value by Victoria Weinstein. This congregation is a theologically diverse religious community with membership open to all who are in accordance with our principles, missions, and vision. We are a welcoming congregation to people of all sexual orientations, and we unconditionally welcome any and all of you to our community of mutual caring and serious intent to grow as a spiritual and moral place. Our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of this financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving. Here on Zoom, we invite you to click in the link in the chat to give online to First Universalist Church. You can also, of course, send a check in the physical mail. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Last night the nightingale woke me, last night when all was still. It sang in the golden moonlight from out the woodland hill. It opened my window so gently, I looked on the dreaming dew, and all the bird my darling was singing of you, of you. Oh, think not I can forget you, I could not if I would. I see you in all around me, the stream, the night, the wood, the flowers that slumber so gently, the stars above the blue. Oh, heaven itself is singing, my darling, singing of you, of you.
I invite you into this reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from this heart-centered place. As we place stones into a bowl, Greg Baum will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All are invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat that we may hear from the community gathered here this morning.
Just not going to read it. Should I?
Just start reading.
A sorrow this week. Armand Leterrier, a founder of Rochester District Heating Cooperative, passed away. RDH has provided the heat for our church building for many years.
Go here.
Joy from Steve Searles. My wife came through surgery and is out of the ICU. A memorial service for Dick Fitz was held yesterday at First Unitarian. Dick passed away that year from Jim Milch. From Ed and Nuke, a joy that Steve and Antonio are visiting Beth. From William Ewell, excuse me, Bill. Becky and I celebrated 58 years of marriage this past week. Eileen Fernandez writes, I'm worried about my great-granddaughter who is ill. From Melissa Parrish, joy, found a house and had an offer accepted. I am on my first time home ownership. Wonderful. This is a sorrow for Florida becoming the new epicenter of COVID as of yesterday's numbers. Johanna Conley writes, this is a dog first, a designated birthday of all rescued dogs with unknown birthdays. Steve Searles writes, sorrow for the end of the eviction moratorium. From John Lukes and Carol Zimmerlin, Carol completed her first week at a new job. Is that it? I guess that's it. Alex Pita, joy that my kids come back from vacation tomorrow.
Well, right, here, Greg.
From Emma, office administrator, joy to be celebrating 2.5 years at this job as of last month. Best job ever, she says. Yay, Emma, from Newt and Ed. Thank you, Emma. Steve Searles.
I'll add a joy that Emma talked me through an IT problem right before we started, and she is really awesome at staying calm and talking people through issues.
John Lukes and Carol Zimmerlin, our friend Wendy survived an emergency appendectomy.
And we drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. Today, we light a white candle, as we do every week, to acknowledge that we are still a community affected by the grief, loss, and fear of living through a pandemic. May this candle's flame hold our experiences around this horrific disease, and may its light be a beacon of hope and a reminder that we are not alone. And even though you can't see it, the candle is burning. Just like on an airplane when they say, even though the bag doesn't inflate, oxygen is flowing to the mask. I invite you now to join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, I no longer want to equate myself with the ego, with all of its guilt and all of its fear. I want to remember that I am love as love created me. Help me to see with your vision the love that is beyond all the images of the world. Help me to see beyond the world, the words and the behaviors of bodies in the world, to see the innocence of each and every creature. Help me let go of beliefs in vulnerability, limitation, lack, and guilt from the past. I am willing to let them go. I am willing to accept gifts of love and peace and joy, which are all around me, if I only still my mind to see them. It is these gifts I would give today and receive the gift in return of the certainty that the world's gifts of perfect happiness and deep peace and limitless love are everyone's, even mine. And to this, let us say together, amen. And now, let us join together in singing the Hymn of Contemplation, number 123, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Its holy grows, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Let go of all that no longer serves you. Why hang on to what no longer serves its purpose? When a t-shirt is weathered and torn, it is discarded, never to be worn again. When baggage is banged up and broken, it's tossed aside, never to be trusted again to keep our precious valuables inside. So why not do the same with all of your harmful habits, those that have worn out their use? Don't let anger become a habit or lying become a routine. Don't let resentment become normal or hatred be absolute. Don't let your compulsions or addictions drag you down and destroy you, no matter what form they may choose to take. These only distractions, they're all only distractions, keeping you from your true potential. Don't perpetuate your pain with any more self-abuse. When you presume that suffering is synonymous with your name, then you continue hanging on to that which hurts you. And in some odd and twisted way, you may even come to enjoy it. Its familiarity consoles you. It somehow fulfills a role in the story you've created and blame for your pain. When you make an excuse for your suffering, you allow its true cause to continue. You let this story of your true self define you, and you become unwilling to ever let its fiction go. You wrap yourself in a comforter of pain. This is a story of woe. However, know this, your story is nothing more than a thin blanket of self-deceit. It cannot keep out the cold. It cannot keep the chill from penetrating your bones. Stop then. Stop repeating all those hurtful and self-loathing stories that you continually spin inside your head. Stop dwelling on and obsessing over your past. Stop identifying yourself with all of its former hurt. Close the book on your past. It is already done and gone. Don't feed your stories and excuses with your focus or further attention. It only makes your problems grow. Let them all go. Let go of all that no longer serves you. Let go of all of those habits, behaviors, and mindsets that limit you. Let go of your fear and your anger. Let go of your pain. Let go of all of those harmful things that keep you from starting anew. At school, I am thought of as a pushover, a well-liked and a well-respected pushover, but a pushover nonetheless. A former principal that I had once said to me, if I had 20 teachers and only 19 new computers, you are the one who wouldn't get one. Because I know that you would make the best of it, you wouldn't complain, and you wouldn't hold a grudge. She said this during my annual evaluation, during the constructive feedback section. She advised me to be more assertive, to say no to people more often, and to set firm boundaries with people, and then police those boundaries very rigidly. That's how I got ahead, she told me. I learned quickly that I had to look out for number one at all costs if I was going to be effective in my career. You are smart and you could go places, but you have got to become more of a hard ass, is what she said, or nobody will respect you. So this advice was well-intentioned, but also quite ironic, I must add, as she regularly took advantage of my generous nature and my flexible boundaries. As many of you probably already know, special education classes are capped by law at certain fixed numbers of students. And our program, each classroom by law can only have 6 students. So at the start of each year, we all begin with 6 students. But as the year goes on, we get referrals from our home school districts for kids who are just not making it in their regular programs, and they desperately need our special services. A 7th student can be added by applying to the state for a waiver. But lots of teachers complain bitterly when usually around the holiday season, they are approached and asked to take a 7th student. Some of my colleagues are so difficult about it that it's simply understood that giving them a 7th student will cause so much trouble that it's not even worth asking them. However, there is one teacher, at least, at the Red Jacket Education Center who can always be counted on to open his classroom and heart to a 7th student, cheerfully and unreservedly. I am nearly always the first person to be asked when a 7th student needs to be added. Now, there's another thing I have to say about 7th students. Typically, students who arrive in our program mid-year are more challenging than those who begin the school year with us. Because schools are very reluctant to disrupt students mid-year, they only make this decision with kids who are really struggling so much that they can't be maintained in their home school districts. So these mid-year arrivals are often more challenging than the students that are already in my class. There is also the disruption of the routine when a new student begins mid-year. Everyone is already settled into their roles by this point, relationships have been built, and routines have been established. There are lots of good reasons that my colleagues resist taking on 7th students. After about 20 years, I have many 7th student stories to tell, but one stands out even among 7th students. It was Thanksgiving week of 2013. It was to be my first Thanksgiving without my mother. And rifts in my family that set in right after her death meant that it was the first time in 50 years that I was not going to have a family Thanksgiving. And while this was, to be sure, going to be a new experience, I honestly wasn't feeling especially sad about it. We were going to be having a potluck with a bunch of friends, and I was feeling fine about my plans. My colleague, Anne, was not okay with it, though. Anne had become a good friend, and since my mother had died the previous June, she had become quite protective of me, probably unnecessarily so. Anne was extremely close to her parents and siblings, and she couldn't fathom a holiday without them. And she was sure that my family experience exactly mirrored her, the ones that she had, and that my feelings about my family were the same as hers. And she thought that losing my mother and then having a rift with my sister all in the same year was absolutely the worst catastrophe that could have ever befallen me. And so when I was approached the Monday of Thanksgiving week and asked to take a 7th student, my colleague Anne hit the ceiling. "No," she shouted when I told her, "absolutely not. They do this to you every single year. Well, not this year. You need to tell them no. You have enough to deal with this year." So as I said, in reality, I was coping fine. But she did get me thinking a little bit. Hey, I thought, they really do this to me every year. Why am I always the one that gets the 7th student? Why shouldn't someone else be inconvenienced and have to do all of that hard work for once? So I went to see my principal and I told her that I'd like to talk. I didn't say that I wouldn't take a 7th student. Technically, I have no right to say that anyway. She can assign a student to whomever she likes. But like most of us, she liked to avoid conflict if she could. And so she always approached the pushovers first. So I explained to her that I already had 6 students and that a few classrooms were still at only 5. I explained that my class was a particularly challenging one that year, and it really was. And I expressed my concern that meeting the needs of this new, very challenging boy might prove to be a high hurdle to clear. When I was done, she smiled and acknowledged all of that. And then she said, "Peter, I have already considered all of that, but this boy has so many challenging behaviors. He is very difficult and extremely hard to like. Frankly, I am afraid that he wouldn't make it in any of the other classrooms. He needs you. You have the perfect touch with tough kids. They respond to you. I'm afraid that no one else has the patience or compassion to work with this boy. You have a gift. I know you can do it." And of course, I knew right then I was getting a 7th student. And while, yes, of course, it is always flattering to be told how good you are at what you do, I knew better than to take what she said at face value. I will be the first person to admit that I am definitely not the best teacher at the Red Jacket Education Center. I am not even, I don't think, one of the best. I'm not being falsely modest here either. I really am not. I am probably somewhere in the middle tier of decent teachers. And my principal knew this too. She mainly gave me 7 students because she knew that I wouldn't complain and that I would really do my best to make them feel welcome. And lest I sound like I have an inferiority complex, I will admit to one strength that I do have, and it's an important one. I do truly see the best in each and every child, and I always try my very hardest to like them, even when I really have to work at it. And I am extremely tolerant. Sometimes people tell me I'm too tolerant. I was reminded of this strength when I spoke to my principal. I knew she believed that the flattery had worked, but really, she just simply reminded me of who I was and how I usually operate. My friend Anne was waiting anxiously for me when I came back from the principal's office. I relayed our conversation to her and she said, "Sucker, sucker, you are such a sucker. She only said all of that so that you'd cave, and it worked. It worked." Well, good luck. Better you than me. Notice that she never gives me a 7th student. That's because she knows better. She knows that she would never hear the end of it. I don't put up with that sort of thing. I don't put up with it like you do, and she knows that. Well, I knew it too. I liked Anne, but she had very rigid boundaries and very high expectations of others. Boundaries that were hard to not violate, and expectations that were almost impossible to meet at times. She had a long list of do's and don'ts that we all had to adhere to if we were going to get along with her. And what made it difficult was that often you didn't know what the rules were until you had broken one of them. Now, before I go any further, I want to say that Anne is a fundamentally kind person, and she was a good teacher. But often her strict boundaries and high expectations got in the way of her being her best and most authentic self. She got angry when people, even students, mispronounced her easily mispronounceable name. She got angry if you tried to explain to her that her name was hard to pronounce. She hated it when colleagues came in a few minutes late, no matter what the reason or no matter what excuse they might have, because she herself was always on time. She hated it when her teacher aides asked her for direction. They should know their jobs, and if they didn't know them, it was not her job to train them. She was never flexible around her lunch break. She took it at exactly 11 o'clock every single day, even on special days like assemblies. She knew our union contract through and through, and there was never in her mind any reason to allow any kind of slack. She knew her rights. Most significantly, for our population of students, she didn't tolerate any disrespect or bad language from students. And she always took it very personally when kids used bad language or said disrespectful things to her. Now, this is quite significant because anyone who has ever worked with emotionally disturbed kids will tell you that bad language and disrespectful comments go with the territory. Our students have disabilities like autism, and they often have mental health issues besides. They have a great deal of difficulty regulating their emotions and are easily given to bouts of swearing and rude comments. You cannot work in our program and not find yourself on a pretty much daily basis a target of misplaced anger and disrespect. That is the job that we are hired to do. But Anne, no matter how many years she was there, took it personally and found it very hard to tolerate and even harder to forgive. She wasn't raised that way, she would tell us, and she saw no excuse for it. How dare anyone disrespect her? If anyone pointed out that none of it was about her, she became very angry. She did not accept bad treatment no matter where it came from and no matter what the reason for it was. Well, this particular year, my 7th student lived up to my expectations and experience of 7th students. Adam was really a handful. He was on the autism spectrum, and he had spent his life in the foster care system. And as a result of being bounced around so much, it was believed that Adam had reactive attachment disorder, a disorder that results when a child feels abandoned or powerless or uncared for or isolated. The challenging behaviors of this disorder include frequent angry outbursts, bad language, a lack of empathy for others, a lack of awareness of others, and an underdeveloped conscience. So that first day, Adam began his relationship with me by swearing at me and telling me that no one liked me. No one likes you, he said, which is why your mother abandoned you at birth, he told me. When he was asked what he wanted for breakfast, he swore at me and told me that I should be able to figure it out for myself. So my teacher aide chose the breakfast sandwich for him, which is usually a hit with the kids. And when she served it to him, he threw it in her face and used language that I can't repeat from the pulpit. When it was time to come to the reading table with me, Adam pulled the chair out from under me and laughed when I fell on the floor, and then used the same filthy names at me that he had used at my teacher aide. And on it went. Through Adam's first day, through his first week, through his first month. Every day was like that. It was absolutely and totally exhausting. And even I, who truly do try my hardest to see the best in all kids, I found Adam extremely hard to like. And then there was Anne across the hall, who reminded me on a regular basis what a sucker I was. Boy, they really sucked you in this time, she'd say after Adam would swear or insult me. I'm telling you, you need to become more like me. They never give me students like that. I will say though, as the year went on, things got a little better. The more time I spent with Adam and the more I learned his quirks, the less I provoked angry outbursts. One of the things that I learned was that if I endured that outburst, Adam could be coaxed to express his frustration in a more reasonable way. And I found that there were nearly always legitimate reasons for his anger. But most people just simply reacted to that anger with their own anger. And so they never learned the reason that Adam was upset in the first place. And in so doing, they missed out on an opportunity to get to know Adam, who in a lot of ways was kind of a neat kid. And even more importantly, they were failing to provide important help that was desperately needed. And they were missing out also, in my opinion, on the primary satisfaction of our line of work. And Anne was not the only person who regularly criticized me for being too tolerant and being too understanding and too compassionate and for letting Adam, in their words, walk all over me. I heard it from nearly everyone, in fact. I never put up with that, and I would never put up with him, I'd be told. You let him get away with too much. You are way too nice. You're too much of a pushover. All he needs is a good firm dose of old-fashioned discipline. Well, to be quite honest, in these moments, and there have been many, many of them over the years, I often doubt myself. Are these people right? Am I being too tolerant? Am I letting people walk on me? And in these moments, it is not lost on me, by the way, that the people who are giving me this advice do seem to get more respect and easier workloads than I do. Are they right? Am I just simply a sucker? During my time with Adam, I questioned myself about this almost daily. Am I really helping him by being so tolerant? Am I really giving him everything that he needs? Because a lot of times he would get out of his academic work with these behaviors. Should I be harder on him for his sake and for mine? Am I really serving him by not being so firm and always calling him out on his rude behavior? I would remind him of it, but not in a confrontational way. And I'm going to say that these situations are not limited to my role as a teacher either. I am often accused in my personal life as well of being a pushover, a soft touch, and yes, at times a sucker. So, am I just a fool? Or is there an upside to being a sucker? Well, I do believe that there are upsides, lots of upsides even, to being a sucker. Although I am not really sure that sucker is the right word for it. But there are really lots of good reasons to be tolerant and flexible and willing to extend ourselves. We all live with the illusion of control. Our comfortable, first world, middle class lives have conditioned us all to believe that we can and should have most, if not all, things all the time our own way. My work with students like Adam is a great spiritual workout. I am daily reminded of my place in the scheme of things. And my flexibility and my tolerance are great gifts in that setting. But I find them useful in other settings as well. In social settings, I can usually go with the flow. In a group of people, I don't care what restaurant we go to or what time we go or what's on the menu or how long we stay or where I sit. On group vacations, I simply follow along. I let other people's preferences guide the agenda. I am just there for the experience. What really counts Anyway, in situations like this, what really counts? The experience with friends or having a perfect meal or a perfect vacation? My priority for myself anyway is always on spending time with the people that I'm with. And I will say that I spare myself lots of grief by not becoming invested in what it is we're actually doing. At these times, I can let go of my ego and I can simply be in the moment. And in case I am making myself sound like the Dalai Lama, let me acknowledge the places where I would like to change and in fact probably need to change. The flexibility and tolerance that I extend to others are gifts that I withhold almost completely from myself. I allow myself no slack, no tolerance, and no flexibility. I set very exacting standards for myself, and I have very rigid internal boundaries and excessively high expectations for myself. I am my own private Anne with myself. There is never an excuse ever in my internal world for not flawlessly and completely meeting the needs at all times of each and every person around me. As I often say, it is not a coincidence that the two careers that I chose for myself were special education teacher and minister. Now, in contrast to me, Anne is very generous with herself. By her own admission on several occasions, she always assumes that other people are letting her down and that she has done more than could possibly be expected of her in any given situation. Over the years, though, she says that she has seen that she's been too harsh and that she's been too inflexible with her students and with other people. And she has some regrets about the times that she hasn't been flexible or tolerant enough with others. So Anne had Adam in her class the year after I had him. She did not have as good as a personal rapport with him as I did. He did not feel as safe with her as he did with me, and he spent a lot of time in the timeout room, much more than he ever did with me. On the other hand, she got a lot more academic work out of him than I ever did. Because she was more demanding and rigid, he didn't get away with as much as he got away with me. He wasn't as happy and he didn't feel as safe with her either. And that is important for a kid with attachment issues. But he did accomplish more academically because she was much less flexible and tolerant about things than I was. So at this point, the question is, which approach was better? I would argue that Adam was best served by having had both Anne and I. But both of us are a bit extreme on opposite ends of the spectrum. The healthiest person is probably between where Anne and I are. There must be a balance between boundaries and flexibility, and no one will automatically be in perfect equilibrium, at least rarely, because no one is flawless. We are all formed and shaped by our natural tendencies, our experiences, and our traumas. The key in all this is to locate ourselves on this flexible to rigid spectrum, to fully understand how we got there, and recognize when and where we need to stretch ourselves. Some of us will need to go one way, and some of us will need to go the other. I think we all have these tendencies. Where we differ is how we express them. Most of us are, and I think could really be divided up into these two camps. Most of us are either too rigid and intolerant with other people, or we are too hard and unforgiving with ourselves. But I do believe that flexibility and tolerance are qualities which always serve us, as long as we extend those generosities to ourselves as well as we do to others. And of course, please note that I am not talking about situations in which important boundaries are being violated or in which we are being abused. Instead, I am addressing the everyday situations in which our egos, our unquestioned and arbitrary boundaries, and our intolerance get in the way of being our most compassionate, generous, accepting selves, whether that is with other people or with ourselves. So, where do you find yourself? Are you more like Anne? Do you set boundary after boundary and then punish anyone who crosses them? Do you tend to give yourself a pass while holding the other person to higher standards than you expect from yourself? I think we all have these tendencies. Where we differ is how we express them. Most of us are either too rigid and intolerant with other people, or we are too hard and unforgiving with ourselves. The real goal is to become aware of where we fall and to make sure that we're fair to everyone. So, are you like Anne, or are you like me? Someone who never gives themselves slack, always holds themselves to unrealistically high standards, and never gives yourself a break. We all need to be suckers. Some of us need to be better suckers when it comes to the needs and feelings of others, and others of us need to be better suckers in allowing ourselves the same generosities that we freely extend to others. No matter which end of the spectrum we fall on, the key is to find the sucker in yourself and to work at letting go of our egos, because our egos can also get in the way of our relationship with ourselves. When our egos are not in check, we tend to set boundaries which are far too rigid and place expectations which are far too high. Some of us will impose these things upon others, and some of us will inflict them upon ourselves. Most of us will probably be a mixture of both in our life histories, but we all, I think, have tendencies to go in either one direction or the other. So which way do you identify? Which way do you tend? Do you identify more with Anne or more with me? Are you rigid and intolerant with others, or do you reserve these qualities for yourself alone? I urge you to take some time to ponder this question. And along with that, make sure that you are honest and fair to yourself about how you evolved the way you did. You are the way you are. We are all the way we are for good reasons. We are all creations of experience and natural tendencies. So be as gentle with yourself as you are honest. Once you have identified which way you tend, pay attention to the role that ego plays in keeping you married to your way of navigating through the world. Are you too rigid and given to others, or too proud and not given to yourself? And think about this too. Ask yourself this question. What is at stake if you let your guard down a little bit? And what might you gain if you do? After a year with me and a year with Anne, Adam returned to his home school district. He left us feeling more secure emotionally and better disciplined academically. And true to our natures, I wondered if I had done everything that I could possibly have done, and Anne felt that she had endured more abuse than she ever should have had to. What we both missed was the fact that it was never about either one of us in the first place. Our final hymn this morning is number 354, We Laugh, We Cry, verses 1 and 4 only. We invite you to remain muted and sing out joyfully from home, again, creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves.
We need to feel the freedom just to
My favorite hymn. As we extinguish our chalice flame this morning, let us read together the words printed in your order of service and on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Though we cannot be seated next to one another in person, we are still connected in this community. As we come to a time to close our service, I want to invite you into an embodied practice of holding hands from a distance at the end of the service. If you are joining us by video, please change your view to gallery view rather than speaker view. Then reach your hands out to the edges of the screen. For people who are here by phone, place a hand over your heart and bring to mind someone you dearly love from this congregation. May we all see all as it is, and may we all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be, for if not us, who? If not now, when? This is the answering cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now, to be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. Let the people of this church and this congregation say now together, Amen. As we come to a time to close our service, I invite you to follow the benediction words with, may I be aware of the role of ego in my life. Please join us in typing these words into the chat together. May I be aware of the role of ego in my life. Let us go forth now, aware of where we fall on the spectrum, willing to question openly, and willing to be kind, generous, flexible, tolerant, and compassionate with both ourselves and others. Amen. Let us enjoy the postlude together.
Everybody's talking at me. Don't hear a word they're saying, only the echoes of my mind. People stopping, staring. I can't see their faces, only the shadows of their eyes. I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain. I'm going where the weather suits my clothes, banking off of the northeast wind, sailing on a summer breeze, skipping over the ocean like a stone. Oh, 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 oh. I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain. I'm going where the weather suits my clothes. Banking off of the northeast wind, sailing on a summer breeze, skipping over the ocean like a stone. Everybody's talking at me, I don't hear a word they're saying, only the echoes of my mind. But I won't let you leave my love behind. No, I won't let you leave